All right, so we are continuing with our logo mashup. Remember that we started this program with our own sketches, whether we were looking at references, and then I backed my sketch up with some digital compositing, and I erased away and kind of drew into it and rearranged things, and this is the sketch I'm now using within Illustrator just to work on top of. So when I saved it, it saved as what's called an AI file. And an AI file is like a PSD file for Photoshop. PSD stands for Photoshop document, AI stands for Adobe Illustrator. So I should just be able to double click on that and it will open up in Illustrator for me. In Illustrator, I like to use layers, even though they're not necessary. They're just an organizational tool. So you go to Window, turn on your layers, and my layer underneath is my sketch layer, and I have this set to be dimmed to 50% just by double clicking it and clicking that option. Notice that each layer will get its own color, and that's for the anchors, the anchor color and the path color for that layer, and that's to help organize different parts. So now on top of this, I started using the pencil tool and drawing vectors, filled vectors. These are paths that are closed. I drew them with the pencil tool. And I think of it like digital inking. I'm just going over my sketch and I'm refining perfectly the edge I want. And it's actually more like cutting out of paper than inking with a pen, because if I use the pencil tool like so, and I set it to fill with black and not have a stroke, I can make as complex a shape as I like, and then it will want to close with that little circle as I get close to the tip. And you see it's closed. I actually drew that on layer 1. So now I'm going to use the dropper tool to fill it in with black. So let's see what that looks like on layer 1. I'll turn off layer 2. So under layer 1, whenever you make a path, even if it's just a line, it's going to give you your own path drop down in your layer, right? And just like you can with layers in Photoshop, I can move that path into a different grouping, because I actually meant to draw that on layer 2, but it's easy to move. Right? So far these are all my individual paths, and they can be selected individually over here. And when it's selected, you'll see the anchor points. But this layer is red, this layer is blue. So if I move it back to layer 1, you'll see that the anchor points are blue. Command Z will undo all that. So in order to not make that mistake again and accidentally draw on top of my sketch, I'm going to lock my sketch layer. And I use the padlocks a lot. That's why they're more accessible here than in Photoshop. They're very useful. And that won't let me add anything to that layer. Okay? Now let's say I like this, and this is where Illustrator is like magic to me. I'm going to select it with the small selection tool, so it just selects that path. I'm going to use the pencil tool, and if I want to extend this, I can kind of make it also work as part of the eyebrow. And all I have to do to extend it, because on my pencil options I have this selected, if I double click to edit selected paths, all I have to do is start and stop on the existing path. If I start on it and stop on it, it will redraw it. They're like magic scissors that can add paper. And of course I can take away as well. So this is how you tweak it. I like it better than using the strokes because I can perfectly control how thick and thin everything gets. And if I am using the pencil tool, if you just hold down Command, it will go to the small selection tool, and you can jump from path to path and refine them. You can also set how smooth or how accurate to your movements you want your pencil to be. So I'm actually going to smooth it out a little bit more. And then if you need to smooth it even more, underneath the pencil tool is the smooth tool. And once you have a path selected, you can just use that to smooth it out even more. So there's lots and lots of options. Okay, so I'm just going to keep doing that. It's my favorite tool in Illustrator. It's what I use for most of my logo designs. But most of my logo designs have kind of a hand-drawn street art feel. I don't like a lot of perfect geometry. But I want to make sure you know how to make paths in other ways. So it's good to have that other file that we started last time, which is your Illustrator playground. So if I open that up, you saw me use the brush tool, you saw me use a few other things. The shape tool is very helpful. So if I wanted to just give myself perfectly circular eyes, I would hold down Shift and use the shape tool. And then with those paths, I could choose for them to be filled in with black, with a white outline, or stroke. Make them very severe sunglasses. And then if I want to match what I just did, I can use the dropper tool, and it will match those settings onto a new path. And then if I want to show a connection between those, make them glasses, I can use the rectangle tool, draw that in. And each path is individual. It can be selected, it can be modified. And that's why this is such a good designer's tool, because nothing is set. Nothing has to be erased. It can be turned on or off. It can be modified. It can be moved. It can be adapted. So if I want to move that down a little bit, I just select that. And I use the large selection tool, the black arrow, to physically move it. I love that Illustrator will give you these little guides where it lines up with different features. If I want to stretch it out, I use that black arrow. If I hold down Option, it will stretch on both ends. So lots of different approaches you can use. How might that apply to my logo? Well, these eye holes. This is tricky because this is a shape within a shape. And this is hard to explain. So to make it clear, I'm going to do this, just so you can see it clearly. I'm going to draw a big shape behind everything. And why don't I show you the pen tool to do that? So let's say I wanted to contain my logo in a nice little oval. So I'm going to plot a point there. I'm going to drop down all the way to the bottom, plot another point, but click and drag so I get what's called a Bezier curve. I'm going to hold down Shift so that Bezier curve stays at 45 degrees. Ooh. It's a little crazy. Let me zoom out. Yikes. All right, and let me change to the small selection tool so I can adapt this handle, right, and make a curve. It's nice and even like that. Okay, you see how it already contained the path for me. I did not close that path. And now what I can do is copy this. So edit, copy, and then paste it in place. Edit, paste in place. That's duplicate. And so you can see them right here in my new layer, these two duplicates. Then I take the one on top and I say Object, Transform, Reflect. This is to flip horizontally, a vertical reflection. And then I use the large selection tool and I can move it. Large selection tool. I can use my arrow keys and put it right in place so I can get a perfectly symmetrical shape. Oh, I thought I was going straight down, but I wasn't. So let me fix that. I'm going to use the small selection tool and click there. Small selection tool and click there and move those together. So now I've got this. I can select that whole layer. A layer is also a good way to select multiples. And I can use the large selection tool on that whole layer and stretch it, holding down Option from both ends. So it becomes this little teardrop thing. And now I'm going to fill this with a color. So I select the whole thing and I change the fill. Let's make it red. All right. So it's like a Dairy Queen stop sign logo with Colonel Sanders on it. The reason I did that is so you can see what's transparent and what's not. And I'll go ahead and move that. I'll keep it right there. But I want my sketch on top of it. But I want my sketch now not just to be dimmed 50%, which it is, but to actually be transparent. So I'm going to go to the gradient options here and transparency, which you can also find under window. And I'm going to take the opacity down so I can see the red coming through. So dimming is not the same as opacity. Dimming like puts a 50% sheet of white over it, whereas opacity actually makes it see-through. Okay, why am I doing that? Well, I want you to be able to see the color coming through. So now, if I lock those layers so I don't mess with them, because those are separate elements, and I go back to my layer with all my drawing, if I just try to draw the outside of this eye socket shape, it's nice and complex. Remember, I have it set to smooth, so it's going to smooth this out a little bit. And I set it to match my other shapes. How do I get that inside shape? Well, it makes sense that I could simply draw again, but this time make it white. But does that really solve my problem? So let me draw a shape here now. And fill it with white. And if you want really clear selections, I'll sometimes do only web colors, so it's easier to select them. And then let's move that over on top, because it's like cut out papers on top of my black shape. But there's a problem there. Because if I want that to be red when it prints, you got to think like cut out paper. That white keeps it from being red, right? Does that make sense? I want it to be a hole, not a filled in shape. So this is where it gets a little complicated, and it's really necessary though. How do I make this shape right here, this white shape, a cutout of this shape? And this is how you do it. You have to select both paths that are involved. So I'm selecting the white shape, and I'm selecting, by holding down Shift, the black shape underneath. Both paths are selected. You see that? Now I go to Window, Pathfinder, which I use almost as much as layers. So it's right here, but the Pathfinder tool. And with Pathfinder, you can do a few things. You're making compound paths for multiple paths. The first one is to just combine them together. So if I click that, this one would just disappear because it would absorb that shape into that shape. But this one is to exclude. So it excludes overlapping shape areas. And voila, it makes the shape. It changed it to white, but it made the shape. And then I can very easily change that back to black. And now you see the red coming through. So that's how I can get those more complicated shapes. And once I have it, it's then very easy to modify. And if I want to get it just right, I can select it. I can take its transparency down so I see the sketch coming through it. And I can trace it more accurately. Okay. And I'll do this again on the other side, but I'll use something else. Remember, there's an inside and an outside edge.